Now, before we get started, we'd just like to pay our respects due to the sad news that Niko Kranjcar, father of Nico, passed away this week at the age of 64. A fantastic player, scoring over 200 goals during his time playing in Croatia and Austria, he also managed the Croatian national team, taking them to the 2006 World Cup. Our thoughts with Nico and his family at this difficult time. Hello, and welcome to the Streets Will Never Forget podcast, episode 2. I can't believe we made it to a second episode. I never thought we'd get this far.
Consistency,
exactly.
Consistent uploads. Here we
I
go.
am once again joined by Callum, known as Wall.
Hello.
And Rob, known as Rob.
Hello, matey. How are you?
Here he is.
Not bad, thank you very much.
A better introduction there this time from Rob.
Than last week, yeah.
You're not going to ask how I am, mate?
How are you?
I'm alright, mate. I'll be a lot better if the Rams pick up 3 juicy ones in the old proverbial 6-pointer on Saturday.
3 big ones. So, this week, obviously, as I'm sure you can tell by the title of the video, we're doing Niko Kranjcar, who is a player played for Portsmouth and Tottenham, Croatian player, played for his national team, just the same as we did last time. We're going to ask a few questions, have a little bit of discussion, talk about what sort of player he was, and at the end, we're going to make a decision on whether we think he's somebody the streets should remember or the streets should forget. So, just to start off, I've got the quiz. Are you both ready?
As I'll ever be.
Fantastic. So, straight to the quiz then. Question 1. How many competitive goals did he score for Croatia?
I'll let you have a go at this one, War, mate.
I believe it's 16. I don't know about you, Rob.
It is indeed 16. 16 goals for his national team. I think he had a fair few appearances as well, actually. I'm not sure if it was 100.
81.
No,
81.
Quite 100,
81,
mate.
yeah.
81.
Question number 2. At which team did Niko Crenshaw retire from football?
I believe
Rangers.
That was what are soon to be the Scottish champions, Rangers.
Scottish champions, yeah, Rangers. Question number 3. Who was the manager of the Croatian international team when he got his debut?
His dad.
His dad, indeed. Niko Kranjcar. Question number 4. When Kranjčar scored against England in 2007, what was the final score?
I believe that was a Steve McLaren spectacular, a 3-2 win for Croatia.
It was indeed a 3-2 win for Croatia. And question number 5. For which team was Niko Kranjčar most prolific as a goal scorer?
As a goal scorer, I'd say Portsmouth.
I believe it was... I can't say it. I'm going to laugh.
Hajduk Split.
Yeah, see, I was thinking Hajduk Split, yeah.
I don't really know. I know he made the most appearances, I think, for Portsmouth, didn't he? But I can't say I'm versed in how many he scored.
It was Dynamo Zagreb.
Oh, that was it. There's a mix-up between Kiev and Zagreb because he played for both, famously, of course.
We need to get back to our research, War, mate.
Yeah, to be fair, both of you, I'm disappointed in both of you. You only got a few of them right.
I knew the first 4. Yeah, but...
Right, so moving on. So Niko Kranjčar, what have you found out about him then, War?
When we were talking about making this podcast, he's the player in my mind that came to me first. He defines to me a cult footballer, a streets footballer. I just love the way he used to play. I think he was really good with his feet and really smart play, clever play. But I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised with actually what I found in terms of statistics and stats.
Yeah, me too, mate. I think when I was looking at him, you've seen a lot about him being underrated, him having, a great first touch, the ability with his first touch to beat a man, him being able, to take on a man, not only doing that, but doing the dirty side as well. I remember seeing a clip of him going in for a sliding challenge with Michael Ballack of Chelsea at the time, and then coming out with the ball and then doing a drag back and a back heel to take Michael Ballack completely out of the game. But then when I go to his statistics, I'm looking at his statistics and I'm not seeing statistics that shout to me or scream to me, this is a modern day great.
Yeah, it reflects a player that took the game by storm. I mean, Premier League wise, I'm looking, he made 154 appearances, and that spans across Portsmouth, Spurs, and QPR for a season. 20 goals and 15 assists overall in the Premier League, which looking
For a
back,
player of his caliber,
I thought actually was a lot more before I looked into this. And of course, goals and assists are not the be all and end all. There's a lot more to the game than that. But at first glance, I was shocked, to be fair, by the amount he actually got goals and assists.
I don't know about that though, mate, because if he's we're calling him an attacking midfielder, aren't we? I think people would define him as a playmaker. And if you're coming back, how many years was he in the Premier League? Well, he spent 3 at Portsmouth, 3 at Tottenham, I think. So that's already 6. And then I think he had a season, didn't he, with QPR? But QPR, to be fair, absolutely woeful at the time. But if we're gonna look at those sort of 5 or 6 years he was with Portsmouth and Tottenham, who weren't bad teams. Portsmouth back in the day won the FA Cup. They were a stubborn team. They were a force. And then Spurs obviously made the Champions League. So I think those stats, if we're looking at a playmaker, they're not. If you were a modern day playmaker with those stats, I think there'd be a lot of questions thrown your way.
What about you, Trey? What do you think?
So I had a little look at him, and I was under this sort of a similar impression as you, Warren, the fact that I thought his statistics would be a bit better. I looked at his Spurs goals, and you'd be hard pressed to find one of them that wasn't an absolute screamer. I looked at, obviously there's that tackle we saw with Rooney.
What, the old one where Wazza tried to break his leg?
Yeah. The way
he glides by that is just majestic. Doesn't even look back.
He doesn't even it's just yeah, exactly. When Waz tries to take him out, he's that desperate for the big 3 points. Nothing's changed for Wazza. And he just skips around him. It's just incredible. And I saw the way that he moved his feet and stuff like that. It makes me wonder a little bit that maybe was it I thought maybe it was the team that were with him. When he was at Spurs specifically, that wasn't good enough. But then I had a little look at the Spurs team and some of the names he played with: Bale, Crouch, Modric, Lennon, Palacios.
Van der Vaart came in as well.
Yeah, Kyle Walker, Jimmy Defoe, Johnson, Gallas. It makes me wonder. I mean, I know Spurs are shit, but I thought maybe they could have done a bit better there. And he was probably a good team at the time.
That's where we've got to probably reserve a bit of judgment, because I've read an article which spoke about how Tottenham used to play him wide left when he wasn't a wide left player.
Yeah.
He was either centre or wide right. And obviously at the time they had players like we said, Van der Vaart, who'd play there, Gareth Bale, who'd play on the left. And they signed Steven Pienaar as well at times to play on the right. So in many ways, I suppose he didn't get to play in his best position. However, if we're looking at his goals and assists, I think you probably expect better. I think one of the stats I found was that he had a shooting accuracy of 28% in the Premier League.
Wow!
And it's certainly for someone of his potential, I think you'd expect more. But I think what I've found from a lot of research, from a lot of digging about him, is that he had these little flashes of greatness where he showed he could be a top player. However, due to inconsistencies and injuries, he never really was able to reach that next level.
Yeah, and of course, there's plenty of players who have flashes and who have the ability to turn it on. Every 1 in 5 games, I'm sure there's plenty of examples we can probably think of. But as well, I think playing him out of position and then bringing in players like Van der Vaart. I know Luka Modric came in probably around the same time, if not a little bit sooner, than Kranjčar. He was probably playing in a team where he was nowhere near, the key man. And I think you can see that from his first season. He had 24 appearances, I believe. 24 starts. His second season, he had 13 starts.
Yeah. It's like I say, though, when I looked at his Spurs goals, a lot of them were, long-range shots. And maybe that was because he didn't get many opportunities to
it was one of his strengths, wasn't it? Certainly striking a ball.
He scored a couple of free kicks as well in his time.
But then I think it was 15 goals with his right and 4 or 5 goals with his left. So, for a player who largely I've seen videos of him using either foot to beat a man. For me, I'm similar to you, Wall. It's not really what I expected. I thought when I was thinking of him, I thought those stats would be doubled, to be honest with you.
Kranjčar went to Spurs for it wasn't disclosed fully, but it was around 2.5 to 3 million.
Yeah, I read
which
a bit
is
about that. Bit of
It's not
digging.
bad at all, that, is it? 3 million for how I mean, well, obviously we're discussing this at the moment, but how good a player I think he was for 3 million is not bad, even then.
One of the things that I've done from my research was that he was in pretty much the last year of his contract at Portsmouth.
Oh yeah,
Portsmouth were in financial, as we know, disarray.
Yeah, of course.
And so 2 million, they weren't going to get much more. Which, when you think about it, back then, obviously it might have been a bit more money, but obviously now it's a snip, isn't it? It's an absolute bargain. 2 million now. You're paying over 2 million for a League One player. Never mind a proven Premier League and Croatian international.
Well, actually, it's nice that you mentioned the international there, Robert. Lets me segue quite nicely into, I think, clearly he was a player of real quality, or else he wouldn't have made 81 appearances for Croatia. He went to the 06 World Cup, which is where the Premier League sort of found him and saw him in his best. Then going to the Euros, then going to the next World Cup, and only missing the 2014 World Cup due to injury.
Did he play in the 2018? I'm assuming not.
No, I don't think so. I think he might have.
He retired in 2018. So.
Yeah.
I know he'd been out without a club, hadn't he, since he left Rangers. I think that's certainly if you're playing in a team alongside Luka Modric and Ivan Rakitic, you've got to have something about you, because Croatia aren't short of quality players, are they? And
no,
like we were
they're
saying,
midfielders.
he scored that famous goal, didn't he, at Wembley against Scott Carson to effectively ensure we wouldn't go to the Euros. Although I'll always defend Scott Carson because he is one hell of a keeper.
Well, is that a debate for another episode, maybe?
Well, possibly.
So just to move on from there, just a quick one. And what I did was I did a little bit of research online about Niko Kranjcar and other people's opinions on him, and I just wanted you both to give me your opinion on this statement that someone's given. Be completely honest with me. This was posted on YouTube 9 years ago about Niko Kranjcar.
Relevant then.
Relevant. And it says, most underappreciated player of the EPL, a touch of Zidane about him.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that one. Was that that was either from was it a compilation, about 1.5 minute compilation, or was it from a man of the match performance for QPR? It was definitely from one of those two.
I think it must have been a compilation, but that is a big comparison. A touch of Zidane.
As I've quite openly said, I've always loved Kranjčar as a player. He's one of the players that when I was younger, he was like, when I watched Spurs play, he was the player like, this guy's good. I love this guy. But I think comparing him to Zidane is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I think comparing him to sort of a Champions League winning, World Cup winning, European international, what is it? Euro winning man is
just win everything.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be lost. It shouldn't be lost. Sort of how much of a decent player he was. He was. He's not amongst the elite, but he's certainly not a bad player at all. I think when I was looking at him, I'd found out that he'd gone into something like 275 tackles and a lot of ball recoveries. So it wasn't. Now we think about players, sort of playmakers. We think of luxury players, don't we? We think that they're the player who can win you a match, but they're not gonna put themselves about. They're not gonna do the hard running and the sort of graft to get back and defend and put in a shift. Whereas when you look at him, you're not getting that. Oh, you're getting a player who is gonna track back, who is gonna help out his defense, and who is gonna put in a real shift for the team.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean by saying not looking just at his goals and assists. Yeah, primarily, but that might be a role that might be a statistic we sort of link
it's something
with a playmaker,
on, hasn't it? It's something that he has to be judged on as a playmaker, but it shouldn't be our overriding emotion.
Well, no, I was just going to reinforce saying, not only was, although he might not have scored as many goals and assists as first expected without looking into it, I think the way he plays, touches, composure, that sort of stuff opens up teams anyway. And then with the quality that Spurs had in these few years there, Van der Vaart, Modric, Bale, he wasn't just the sole playmaker. There was plenty of options they had. Aaron Lennon was there on the wing as well.
Well, to back up your point as well, mate, one, you're looking at a player, who you've said great composure, could touch the ball down with either foot, and he did have the ability to go by a defender or go by a midfielder. And one of the things that I've heard Harry Redknapp talk about this himself, is that as far as he's concerned, football's a very simple game. You get the ball, and obviously they would have had Crouch at the time, and you hit it long for Crouch and you get yourself up the pitch. So if you're not playing into feet to a player like Niko Kranjcar, you're probably not going to get the best out of him.
I mean,
Definitely.
Harry Redknapp, he bought him 3 times, didn't he? 3 different clubs.
Yes, he clearly had something about him.
Love-hate relationship, from what I've read from Niko Crenshaw, said just a love-hate relationship with Harry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, Portsmouth website gave an interview just speaking about this love-hate relationship he had with him.
Well, I think any good manager has that sort of relationship, because you have to have the good with the bad, don't you?
Well, I mean, there's stories told about Fergie, isn't there? About how much of a, scary person he was, the hairdryer, yeah. But you can't dispute his results, can you?
Oh no, certainly not. And all the players always have good things to say about him. His man management was fantastic, but you can't have that without being able to tell them off every now and then when they're not playing, good enough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's something that Gary Neville said about Fergie, that you once told him to F off, and then he never dared do it again. Like it was that sort of thing.
I don't think I'd dare. How old is Fergie now? About 75, 76, somewhere around there.
I mean, he's definitely knocking.
I don't think even now I'd dare say that to him.
You could probably outrun him. Just another comment now we're moving on to. So again, this was 9 years ago. So bear that in mind. He's being compared to another player. So try and think of what the person would have been going through 9 years ago and what they would have been thinking. Kick Modric out. He is shit. Kranjčar is the best. I mean, it's a Modric of 9 years ago. Again, I don't know if he was shit at the time. Modric
was probably one of those underappreciated players, wasn't he, at the time? I think that when we look at him now, it's only sort of 2018, and around that time, I think he won the Ballon d'Or, didn't he? Breaking Ronaldo and Messi's streak. I think that's sort of the only time he got the credit, because obviously everyone's always said what fantastic footballer was, and people have said, the best player they've ever played with.
He won the Golden Ball as well.
At the time, I think for whoever's commented that is again probably the underappreciated, isn't it? It's probably being him almost like the holding midfielder. No one knew how good they were up until sort of the last few years.
Yeah, agreed. So obviously we've spoken a lot about the teams that he played for and things like that, and obviously internationally he was really good as well. What sort of opinions did we have about him before we went into this research?
Well, I mean, I think I made it quite clear. I thought he was a key man for Spurs, key man for Portsmouth. Stuff went through him, play went through him, and he got goals and assists. And I still think play went through him. I still think he was a very important player for these teams, but clearly he didn't have the impact that I initially believed. But I still think he's a quality player.
Rob, what about you?
Well, I think before I did sort of a lot of the video watching, because obviously it's been a long time since I've even thought about Niko Crenshaw. I probably thought of him as that supposed magician on the pitch, wasn't he? He was that player who had the ability to unlock a door. He could win you a game with a bit of skill or a pass or a 25-yard effort. He had that about him, did he? He had that little bit of magic. And I'm pretty similar as well. I think the stats weren't what I expected at all. I was pretty taken aback by them, but I still think there's no denying he was a decent player. He was a Premier League quality player, and whenever you've got someone who's a Premier League quality player, you're a decent footballer, aren't you? You've made it essentially, aren't you? There is no higher pinnacle for a footballer than to reach what is the best league in the world, which is the Premier League. And not only that, but when you make 150 appearances, over 150 appearances, you've got to be doing something right. You don't move from a successful Portsmouth team to a Spurs team and enjoy a reasonable commodity of success. Well, what they would have defined as success as reaching the Champions League. You don't do that without being without having something about you, without being a player who's got ability, without being a player who's got the skills, who can dribble and who can shoot.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm talking about how I feel about him, I suppose I'm not the biggest Spurs fan, to be honest with you. But
I mean, I think that's putting it lightly.
Pretty lightly. But he.
You're not a big Spurs fan, but you're a big Mourinho fan, aren't you, mate?
A big Mourinho, love Mourinho. Mourinho's top bloke in Jose. What I thought about him, I must admit, I didn't realize he was so. Aside from the stats, I didn't realize he was so good not to do with the stats. So when you watched him play, there's not well, there is, I suppose, but there's not many stats for like how he'd move the ball forward and stuff like that. Is there? There's only like assists and goals, and they're the main ones. And then obviously that's what I thought before. I suppose my opinion's changed slightly, but
now you've given a bit of your opinion, Trail. I wanted to get sort of both your guys' views on this. So the fact that I find out that he scored 3 weeks before his 17th birthday on his league debut, and then he is also Dynamo Zagreb's youngest ever skipper, and having been named youngest ever skipper, he was deemed the best player of the season.
Is that in the league or by the club?
That's the league, mate. That's the league, yeah. So to be playing football, professional football, before the age in doesn't matter what league it is, it's professional football before the age of 17. You've got to have a fair bit of something about you.
I think what that screams to me is then unfilled potential, because to go from that to go to the Premier League, that's great, but I kind of think he could have done more. I kind of think there's something missing from him.
I mean, I think saying unfilled potential is quite harsh. I think there's a lot of players who come to the Premier League from Eastern Europe, South America, and they come in and they've got the hype and they've got the quality, and they don't show up. Now, Kranjčar has definitely shown up. Maybe not to the level you're expecting, but he's definitely come and he's made an impact. Also, we'll be talking about him.
I just think there are a lot of players that could have done what he did.
I think you're very much in the bracket of the comment of the little flashes of greatness, aren't you? But without the consistency to make that next level.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he, we're talking, we speak on the player because we've watched some highlights, not seen him play properly. Obviously, in the Prem, and we talk about looking at highlights and stuff like that. But there were lots of times he probably didn't show up, and obviously you don't see those in the videos and stuff like that. But what I think to myself is I look at these great things he's done, but see that they are limited. I think it was War you mentioned earlier on in the pod that we can all turn up for a game every now and then.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's probably what he did, and for me that's not somebody that is I mean, again, you said at the start he was like, the pinnacle of the streets we'll never forget, and for me that he's not that at all.
That's a fair judgment, mate.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've hit it on there. I saw him as a pinnacle of the street footballer, a cult footballer that everyone remembers and thinks, yeah, he was great. Clearly from this discussion, I think maybe we've changed our opinion slightly, but as you said, we're going to move on to that now. So
so we'll just move on to that. So we'll go through the ranking system again. For anybody that's not heard it, or just to remind you two as well. So the ranking system works in the sense of not necessarily skill, just how much you think they should be remembered. So how, if they are really that important. So rank number 1 is the streets should never forget. Rank number 2 is the streets should remember him. Rank number 3 is the streets can do what they like. Rank number 4 is the streets should probably forget him. And rank number 5 is the streets should definitely forget. So what rank number are we putting at him? Let's go to you first, Rob.
This is a really tricky one for me. I think that we're looking at a player who, who on his day was a magician, and we're looking at a player who clearly Portsmouth, Spurs, even QPR fans have real fond memories of. We're looking at a player who could essentially pick a game-winning pass, who can unlock a defence and play a ball through. We're looking at a player who, like we said, wasn't a luxury player, who wouldn't be carried and who would put in a real shift for the team. And we're looking at a player, like we said, who did have games of pure quality and things like that. But I think we're looking at a player as well also hampered by injuries and inconsistency. And I think if we're going off that basis, if it's going to be for me, I think it's going to be one where we're certainly always going to remember his name, but I think I'm going to put him in the streets can do what they like. I don't think, for me, for a playmaker, those stats aren't good enough to put you in the bracket above.
What do you think, War?
I think obviously had we said this at the start of the pod and before any of our research, I think I'd have stuck him in the streets. The second one, I forgot the exact word. Streets remember him. The same as our big Ricky, you know. But look again, I think as Rob's put about him being a playmaker and being that specific position, you know, you probably need to have a bit more of an impact in terms of the actual, you know, the one statistic that counts, you know, goals, assists, actually getting.
But that's essentially that's why people nowadays are paying huge amounts of money, aren't they, mate, for the playmakers, because they're the ones who provide those goals and assists. They're the ones who create those chances. And I think when, like you said, mate, comparing him to our Ricky, I think when we look at what Ricky did, the way he went from level to level to level, League Two, League One, Championship, and Premier League, and sort of worked his way up. I think it's tough. I think it's a real tricky one of where to place him. But I tend to agree with what I put. I think for a playmaker, you've got to do more, you've got to create more, and you've got to have better stats than that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'm going to agree with you, Rob. I do think I'll put him in the third bracket. The streets can do what they like. Although I would like to quickly mention, let's not forget, he did win the FA Cup with Portsmouth.
Yeah, but that was a quality Portsmouth team, wasn't it, mate? Back in the day, the likes of David James, Herman O'Riderson, Sylvan Distan, Sol Campbell. You know, there were some good. We've seen it. We've heard a lot about that Portsmouth team. They sounded really good characters. They sounded a really good team spirit, and we've seen it recently. Obviously, not many teams have won it because it's been dominated by teams like Arsenal, Man United, and Man City. But in recent years, you've seen teams like Stoke and Bolton and teams like that make it far in the FA Cup.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I thought I'd have to have a bit more of an argument with you both over this, but I totally agree with you. Streets can do what they like. Rank 3. You both probably mentioned everything I was going to say, but he just didn't do enough for me. Like, I'm not saying he was a bad player, but he just didn't do enough, and I don't think he should be remembered over a lot of other players at that time who, you know, played better than him, achieved more than him. Like I say, I didn't realise the quality of the Spurs team that he was playing with. Again, we've got to take into account, you know, he was played in the wrong position or injuries or things like that. But for me, he's definitely not somebody who should be held above a lot of other people that were playing at the time.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. Good player.
Still a very good player.
Magician.
Yeah, still a very good player.
Yeah, still a great player, but lacks the consistency and lacks, from what we've seen, lacks the stats to make it into that second bracket. Considering that second ranks is really going to have to be sort of the elite and the high quality.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you there. I don't think we're doing him any disservice by putting him in that rank. It's just that he wasn't somebody who will stand, you know, the test of time. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me again today. Another great discussion. A little bit more, you know, we sort of disagreed a bit more in this one than we did about Big Ricky.
Yeah, I can feel my temper brewing, I'll be honest.
Listen, screaming.
I think it's been a bit of an eye opener, hasn't it? I think it's been certainly from what we've looked at. I think it's been a bit of a strange episode for all. I think we're all maybe slightly disappointed we aren't putting him higher.
I mean, I definitely am. Like I say, I've always thought he was a great player.
You were so passionate, weren't you?
Well, like I say, he was my go-to choice when we first chatted about this. He was the one that came to my mind straight away.
But a good choice either way. Well, we've learned something new. We've learned something. We've got formulated our opinion, and we've had a good go at expressing it. Exactly. And now it's time for everyone else to do it. So, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been episode 2 of the Streets Will Never Forget podcast. And this has been Niko Kranjcar. Thank you very much, boys.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
See you later, mate.